Good morning. Welcome to the Friday edition of Sunrise Daily. I'm Ayo Makinde.
Indeed, it's a bright and bubbly Friday. Good morning and welcome to Sunrise Daily on Channels Television. I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo.
A very good morning to you all. Welcome to Sunrise Daily. I'm Chamberlain Uso, and we're picking up here from Abuja. Well, at the moment, lots of concerns and questions concerning what the Ministry of Finance is thinking about. Remember the tax on data and calls, the telecom tax. Well, yeah, it's gathering momentum. I mean, some time ago, the Minister of Communication did say, well, wide consultation has not been made about that, and so it's not exactly a good idea to go on with it. But today, as you will see when we move on with the dailies, the ministry says, the government says, the minister is aware of that, and they are proceeding with that telecom tax. So it appears as though in spite of the inflationary cost and what you had to pay getting goods and services, we may just have to pay more with respect to telecom tax.
Oh, while that the interesting thing, Chamberlain, is that the being aware and agreeing are two different things. But I'm not even going to speak for the minister right now. I'm going to allow him to do that himself. But you know, one other thing that the Federal Ministry of Finance has said is the 5% additional increase. Remember, we already pay 7.5% on goods and services, including VAT, which is VAT. Of course, that's already in the system on all goods and services across the country. But the additional 5% tariff being added is in the Finance Act. And it is a law already, but has not been implemented. How that is going to play out, I guess we're going to have to wait and see.
Well, you don't have to wait to calculate how much, in addition, you'll now have to pay for your data. I imagine that what you paid for 500 MB, maybe you now have to pay 750 naira, Well, the telecom services will let you know what you paid 1,000 naira for, 1.5 gig. You have to pay a lot more for that as well. Don't forget that there was an additional, cost on the use of the USSD code, some time ago. And then, Nigerians said, okay, we could maneuver that and make use of the app. You don't have to use the USSD code. But wherever you turn these days, there's an increase on the fee of a service that you just have to contend with. Don't forget that there's food inflation. There is, the general inflation, of course, which becomes a ricochet effect on all other services, transport services and all of that. Well, that's the Nigeria where we find ourselves in today. The question is this the legacy that this administration is leaving for Nigerians? Something for, the managers of the economy to reflect on as we move towards the general elections.
I guess that will be the business of the government to respond whether or not that's the legacy but they want to leave. But some of those legacies are represented on the front pages of the papers this morning. The lead story on the front page of the New Telegraph in particular, well, that story we just highlighted, you will find it there as well. We'll get there. But the lead story is 2023, Nigerians must question presidential candidates. That's ascribed to Father Kuka. Says if candidates don't think it rude to ask for votes, it shouldn't be rude to ask them questions. That's a quotable quote. Religious divide in Nigeria largely artificial. General poll going to be determined by young people. Find that story on page 4. Now, that story that we just talked about, in case you need more about it, it's right there above the nameplate of New Telegraph. Telecom's tariff, FG adamant on 5% hike in calls and data usage, says Pantami aware of decision. The story is on the inside pages. Then right under that story is that one. Survey shows 12 states owe workers' salaries. 12 states. Well, it's not up to half, but it's significant.
Significant, even if it's one. Because one Nigerian worker is as important as, you know, thousands across board.
Well, let those state governments come and speak to it. It's important.
We wait. From there, let's move to News Direct, I believe. We can take News Direct this morning. Nigerian News Direct has a harvest of stories. A lot of them will command your attention. But let's go straight to the big story first of $418 million Paris Club refund. No justification for governors to challenge deduction. That's attributed to the federal government.
Interesting story.
Interesting story. Attorney General not serving public. That's attributed to Onyekwere. Well, we'll explore all of that. Interestingly, it will form our talking point today on the program. Well, that's it for the big story. Let's look above the nameplate of the Nigerian News Direct. You'll also find at the extreme left-hand corner, NLNG denies involvement in illegal gas exportation. Well, we hope that the denial is true, and especially that we do not have to contend also with gas export, loss of revenue to gas exploration as we are with crude oil theft. Well, one more story, fees on advertisement promotions, not double taxation. That's attributed to the NCC. That's it.
If it's NCC, is it the same telecom regulator? I don't know. It's just a question.
It's the same, Ayo. Nigeria Communications Commission.
Not Copyright Commission.
Not Copyright Commission.
Okay. Chamberlain.
Well, take a look at Daily Trust here. We won't use force to rescue abducted trained victims, ascribed to Buhari. Meets release victims, says neutralizing terrorists won't stop. We can't afford ransom. Families, presidential guards killed by terrorists buried amid tears. And so the image you see there on the front page indicates that as well, the event that occurred yesterday. So that's the big lead right there. So, but some of these other headlines already mentioned, that of the AGF, the finance minister. Well, the ministry equally saying 1,755 terrorists surrendered, 29 killed in 2 weeks. So you may want to check that out as well. That's Daily Trust this morning.
Quick look at the leadership newspaper lead story, terrorists creating parallel government in Kaduna. That story is on page 4. It's ascribed to the governor of the state, El Rufai, says they are exercising control over socio-economic activities, justice dispensation, and guess what? I won't use military to rescue train attack victims, ascribed to PMB. Troops nab 2 more suspects in our church attack. Well, all of that is packed on the front page, but that lead story saying terrorists creating parallel government in Kaduna, I can't even imagine the possibility of it. I can't imagine the possibility of it.
Well, Ayo, you know, when it's always interesting when the chickens come home to roost, you know. Not too long ago, we recall how the same administration carpeted the former administration for being unable to rein in on insurgency. Well, this is what we have on our hands now.
What a chicken. Anyway, that's the lead story of the Leadership Friday. Governors can't stop $418 million Paris Club payment to consultants, ascribed to the AGF. And then this one, anxious Kenyans await next president after tight vote. Yeah, they're waiting. We are awaiting voting, but they are waiting the results.
We're waiting so many other things too, but let's leave it there, Ayo. From there, let's take a very quick look at this Nigeria, this Nigeria this morning, and it leads with that very sad story from yesterday. Tears flow as presidential guards killed in terrorist ambush, buried. I have a sad one there, but we hope that there'll be closure for the family members of those who have been slain. Okay, we also have Ekweremadu, that's at the right-hand corner. Ekweremadu, federal government won't intervene, says AGF Malami. And from there, let's take another look at another interesting story, a developing one from yesterday. Under fire, Lalong defends reference to Pope on campaign job. Well, that's the this Nigeria for you this morning?
Chamberlain. Well, that's the much of the papers we can take for now. We take on our issues when we return from this break. We'll start in Abuja. Please stay with us. In dynamics coming right through there, there is no way that would happen without the intervention of the federal government. And one is wondering just how the Nigerian Governors Forum are going to take this on board, because, you know, there was that letter from the Governors Forum, you know, saying one or two things about what the office of the Attorney General, you know, is doing, or what the federal government is doing, illegal deductions and all of those things. And then now this is the response of the federal government. I'm wondering how this is going to end.
Well, we don't want to run ahead of ourselves now and begin to ask questions, even though there are very, very important questions to be asked.
Yeah.
And one of which would be, okay, so are you saying that we're no longer entitled to what is left of the $418 million Paris Club? Well, it's a question.
Okay, well, let's listen to, you know, this conversation that Chamberlain is going to be having with someone representing the Nigerian Governors Forum. Chamberlain.
Oh, yes, indeed. I've got Mr. Abdurrahman Bello Barkindo here. He is the head media and publicity of public affairs of Nigeria Governors Forum. Good morning. Thank you for coming on today, and good to see you.
Good morning, Chamberlain. Good to see you too.
This is just becoming intractable because, I mean, right from one of the most recent times when the promissory note was issued, there was a hue and cry. Governors spoke up saying, look, what's going on? How could you do this? But now, the minister has reignited this controversy. In fact, he goes down memory lane, highlighting what transpired, how he came into this. And incidentally, some of the narratives there also, he corroborates what some of the consultants had also said previously when we invited them on the program. So if you could go ahead and tell us, what is going on with this?
It's such a shame. I mean, I feel very morally burdened to be discussing this thing all over again, because this is a matter that's sub judice. Case is in court. We're talking about the Attorney General of the Federation, who is the chief lawmaker in this country. And I would have thought that the most reasonable thing to do is to let these cases, you know, just end up in court so that they would have a logical conclusion. But what we're going through is that the consultants, so to say, do not even need a personal lawyer or some private lawyer. They're being defended by the federal government. And if you remember...
You mean the AGF?
Yes, the AGF. He represents the federal government. And if you remember, only 2 days ago or 3, at the FEC, I read somewhere where someone said that the president had given an express order that all deductions be discontinued until the cases are concluded. So why are...
So they're in disagreement on that? The AGF's position and the president's position?
That's what I noticed. I mean, I'm not trying to imply anything, but if the president gives an order, and he is President Muhammadu Buhari, and some attorney general comes, at least this government is known as the Buhari government. It's not the Malami government. If Buhari gives an order, I believe that Buhari should be respected. But that's not what we're seeing. The point is, all the consultants we're talking about are lawyers. Why are they afraid of the court of law?
But for some of what the AGF narrated when he says that the governors and the consultants, after the case, they came to a consensus on how to proceed on that. And one of the consultants said that was in November 2018, while he was during the pendency of the suit. And the governors agreed that we will go ahead. In fact, the minister says they already paid some of it. So how come all of a sudden they say, no, stop? What changed?
Chamberlain, the governors of 2018 are no longer the governors in power today. The chairman of the Governors Forum in 2018 was Yari. There is a new chairman. And among the governors...
Isn't it a continuum?
There is a continuum, of course. And among the governors are, you know, serious legal luminaries. There are SANs and all sorts of lawyers. And they have reviewed these cases and discovered that there are no basis for these payments. And we're human. We can make mistakes. And if you realize, look, the fact that you have been paid some money falsely or wrongly does not vitiate the fact that that money can be recovered. So what the governors are saying is that the first payments were in error, gross error. And they're saying, let's conclude this case and the other monies would also be retrieved. So they're relying on the fact that some payment had been made, so the remaining payment must be made, is not tenable.
So when the minister, the AGF says that when the Governors Forum requested the refund of the Harry Club debt, part of the component was payment for the consultants. What does that mean?
I hate to say that is untrue. There is no component that compels the Governors Forum to pay anything, and there is no agreement between the consultants collectively and governors collectively. One of the consultants had a contract with 13 states, and now he wants money deducted from 36 states. I don't see how that's going to happen. Another of the consultants was an employee of the ALGON, Association of Local Governments of Nigeria.
Yes, ALGON contracted him. He
the
did
ALGON,
he was actually,
in fact, the EFCC had done an investigation and described his being part of this payment as a fraud. Besides that, another lawyer is also accusing him of fraudulently using his efforts to collect money from the NGF. So there are all sorts of cases surrounding this, this matter. And I believe that the most responsible thing to do is to allow these things to go to whatever court. One of the consultants had also been to the Supreme Court and lost this case. So he's still now expecting that payments will be made to him. And he's part of this $480 million. I mean, it's a lot of money if you look at it. Because the universities are shut. A lot of people have not been paid their pensions. And some, juggernauts somewhere are expecting that the federal government would give them $480 million from states' money. Remember that this money is not just kept aside to pay this $480 million. No, the Paris-London money has been expended. These consultants and their attorney general, because this is not the attorney general of the Federal Republic of Nigeria anymore, for him to be defending private concerns. They're expecting these monies to be deducted from state accounts at source over, I think, 52 or 58 months. So that's, I mean, unheard of. That there is no evidence of work done. That's what the Governors Forum is asking for. Please, present evidence of the work you had done. Some of them said they had constructed primary health care institutions around the country. Others said they have constructed boreholes. These are physical things that you can show.
But what about the ones that they say that, well, we actually found that some of those funds that were supposed to have been paid was paid to a consultant that was not existing, that was never part of anything. So they discovered that, because if they didn't discover it, those monies would have gone completely elsewhere and the governors would not even have him. So all they're asking for is a certain percentage of that money which they found that the governors benefited from.
That is untrue. When this payment was approved, there were all sorts of claims by different consultancies, including lawyers and accountants. And all of them were compiled under a committee and verified. Those that were verified were paid. And even those who did not present their issues before the Nigeria Governors Forum were invited to present their issues so that their efforts would be, rewarded. And this thing happened over a period of close to 9 months. Everybody made his presentations. One of the 4 consultants that we're talking about today got payments of huge sums of money. And now he's coming back to say that there is a balance of $68 million. I mean, we're talking about dollars, not naira. He's asking for another $68 million. And the Governors Forum is saying, look, even the first payment that we made to you was, a little bit shoddy. So by the time we straighten out the facts, we'll now begin to look at those monies that are supposed to be recovered and those that are not.
But if the AGF says, look, they consented, they paid some money, meaning that, look, at the end of the day, they might as well have even paid up all of the money, and the current governors may not even have had a case. But because certain things happened, they didn't finish payment of all the money. So how could they just turn back and say, no, you can't pay us anymore because that was made in error? They say, look, what has happened until they have a contrary decision. He can't do otherwise.
Well,
is it right
why don't we wait for the contrary decision? Because this matter is in court. The court is the only authority that can determine clearly whether there is reason for payment or not. So why are, very highly placed lawyers afraid of their own platform?
But why do you think that insistence on the part of the AGF is going on? Because if he says, look, I have a basis here in front of me to pay, to make all these payments, and he feels he can't be faulted because governments are crying wolf where there is none, he says.
I'm supposed to ask you this question. Why is the AGF so interested that he doesn't want the courts to determine what should happen? That's something that every ordinary Nigerian should think about. I mean, we have a lot of problems in this country. The government is complaining of being cash-strapped, and a government agent is now fighting willy-nilly to get private concerns paid when, government workers are not paid. So I think this is left for the public to decide, because this thing has been coming, and it's becoming very worrisome that even for me as a private citizen, to continue to come here to discuss something that should have been done with in 2019.
But the other component of this is that at the moment, the judgment could go either way. So, before it's hypothesis at the moment, because, I mean, yes, you say we should wait until the judgment comes before either party can decide what happens. But clearly, it could go either way.
I'm a journalist. I should allow you to conjecture that it could go either way. But as far as I know, and with the facts, at my disposal, I know the judgment is going only one way. And that is why, and I'm sure that the people we're dealing with also know that the judgment is going one way. So that's why they're trying to circumvent the, processes of the law and do whatever they want. If, for instance, they are not in power, is he going to continue to fight for these people?
So the monies, we'll go to Lagos pretty soon, but the monies that had already been paid, is the NGF requesting that those monies be refunded, or they're saying, look, we'll just take it from where we are?
Not yet. Not yet. What the NGF is saying, that there is no more money to be paid, and that the monies that have been paid were paid in, quote-unquote, gross error. So by the time we conclude this matter, we don't know how the next matter is going to take place. But for now, the NGF is saying there is no money to be paid until the courts say, pay them.
My colleagues in Lagos, I've got some questions for you. Go ahead, guys.
Well, thank you, Chamberlain. Let me begin, Mr. Bello, by asking you this. Perhaps there is a need for some historical background for some people to really understand what's going on here. I remember that as far back as 2013, there was some understanding or judgment or whatever it is that some consultancy consent judgment of more than $3 billion, which they made commitment to pay, and indeed made part payments between 2016 and 2017. So I'm wondering if you want to give some background to people. What we are talking about is a debt, and it dates back many years. Perhaps some understanding of what those issues are will help some people put this issue between the federal government and the state governors in perspective.
What I can tell you clearly is that these debts are said to be incurred by Algon and state governments over job that was supposed to be done. Some of these jobs were forensic, some were legal, and some are physical. And because a lot of contractors, I mean, I've talked about this over and over again, a lot of consultants have approached states and said, you've made some overpayments, during the, return to democracy. And if you want to recover this money, we're going to help you get them. So a lot of consultants went to different states. And that's why we had, a plethora of claims from various parts of the country. And when this approval was gotten, the NGF advised all contractors, all accountants, all lawyers who have anything to do with this matter to present their cases. And these cases were presented. There was a committee that looked at all of them and decided that, yes, every contractor or consultant would be paid according to his effort. And until the end of 2018, I think everything was settled. But all of a sudden, some people began to come back to claim that they have a balance of money they are supposed to collect, or some are saying that, well, they haven't been paid. Look, we can't find justification for the kind of claims they are making. So the Governors Forum, with the new leadership, decided that, okay, if you think you have any monies that are left with us, we want you to prove what you had done. Now, if you said you constructed boreholes, bring the evidence of those boreholes around the country. If you said you constructed primary health care institutions, where is the evidence? One of them, I can tell you, is claiming that during the crisis of the NGF, when there was an election, and one of the governors said he won an election with 16 people over 19 people, somebody went around and said he did a review of a 16-page document for this factional chairman of the NGF and demanded for $47 million for that job. The NGF is saying, if you did a job for a factional chairman, go to the faction. The faction does not exist today. If you go to the NGF secretariat, there is no picture of that man saying he had been chairman of the NGF. So why are we going to pay $47 million for the review of 16 pages of some kind of judgment that was not in our records at all? So all the claims, as far as the NGF is concerned, are bogus. But if they are that powerful and they insist that the Attorney General is working for them and not for the Nigerian people, so be it.
Mr. Barikindo, this liability is inherited, according to your narrative now, from the past Nigerian Governors Forum. Doesn't this speak to lack of proper handing over of notes between past governors and the current regime of the Nigerian Governors Forum? And we're talking about very important state funds here. I imagine that no governor would want to inherit liabilities. Speak to this functional, or as the case may be, dysfunction in government systems.
I don't see where your idea of a breakdown is coming from. I didn't say there is a lack of continuity. What I'm explaining is that if a payment had been done by the Nigeria Governors Forum and the new leadership of the Nigeria Governors Forum looks at this payment and says this payment is wrong, is there anything wrong with that? What they're saying is the payment was not justified. If you remove money from a certain place and give to someone, and the next resident of that institution says, I've looked at it, and aren't you supposed to say, okay, let's do the right thing? The most moral thing is to say, okay, we're returning the money, or yes, this payment was wrong. If you have evidence that what you were paid is rightly belongs to you, then that's fine. But we're saying when you come back and say there is some other extra payment to be done, and we say, look, the first payment in the first place is even not due to you. How does it become a breakdown in continuity? The NGF has a leadership that is seamless.
What I'm saying
so
is,
what we have.
What I'm saying is, if the last administrations handed over properly, in their notes, then no consultant will come and make false claims, as the case is now turning out to be. I'm sure you would agree with that.
No, I wouldn't agree with that. They handed over properly. The point is, these monies came at the tail end of the previous administration's tenure. And when this new tenure started, they looked at everything that had been done. It's not like it was like they're disagreeing with the previous administration. No, they're saying that when these people came with other demands, they looked at it and said, hey, wait a minute. Even the last one that you got is not really due to you. But let's go to court and first defray this one that you are asking for. You do not deserve it, and we're not going to give it. But you can see what is going on. This is how I've been in this studio like 4 times, arguing over this same thing that they're supposed to have settled all along. If they can't settle it, they are lawyers. I mean, we have been in court with these people over and over again. Somebody had even gone to the Supreme Court and lost this case and is still there asking to be paid. I mean, who do we respect? The words of the president, the words of the attorney general, or the courts of law? So we're just trapped in a, messy conundrum. We need to settle this thing in court. We are in court. They are all lawyers. They should let this thing take place in court. And if they are, if they are deserving of this payment, the payment would be done. But they are asking that monies be taken away at source from states and local governments just because, they are powerful. Because what we are dealing with here is, the typical powerful Nigerian man.
So is it a question of how they are asking for the money to be gotten from, or where they are asking for it to be gotten from? That's the main issue here.
I think where they're asking the money to be gotten from is even the, biggest sacrilege. This money belongs to states. It belongs to the masses of this country. And you are asking that because you are powerful and you can reach, the resources of this country, money should be taken at source and given to you. I mean...
So if it was not at source, would they have a problem with it?
Well, where would they get the money anyway if it was not at source? That's why they're using the Attorney General of the Federation to get the money at source. Because states do not have any reason. Like if you have a contract with 13 states and you are asking every state to lose 10 million naira every month for up to 60 months, I mean, what does that say?
But what about those who argue that some of the governors cannot feign ignorance? Because in 2018, those who were there, some of them are still there today. So they cannot feign ignorance that they don't know what transpired because they were part of the consent judgment.
No, there's no such consent judgment, actually. No. Yes, there's no such consent judgment. What the Attorney General is claiming that there's a consent judgment is what the NGF is saying did not exist. There's another guy who went to court and, filed for, order of mandamus, and merely filing does not mean that it exists too.
Because one of the consultants said he called the AGF after the Governors Forum got to him saying, we agree to this consent judgment. And the Governors Forum wrote the AGF saying, yes, we agree that he be paid. And that was part of the reasons why they factored all that in and said, well, if that's the case, we might as well go ahead and pay. So is that not true as well? No, that's not true. If you're listening to a narrative from one side, you should also listen to the other. Because that's what we're asking.
Yes, the Governors Forum has written to the Vice President explaining that, all these claims to ownership of this money is not true. We had, in fact, last Wednesday, before this Federal Executive Council meeting took place, we got wind that this matter is going to be discussed at FEC. And letters were written by the chairman to the secretary to the government of the Federation, and that was how FEC did not get to approve this money immediately. And that's where, the order by the president that this thing be status quo be retained until courts have concluded this matter. So this, suddenly coming out to say, oh, the money is going to be paid whether the president gives an order or not, becomes curious.
So one of the consultants argued that the Governors Forum got $3.1 billion for his work because he found out that those monies were illegally deducted, for which Governors Forum benefited because of his action. And he's asking for 20% of that money, which the Governors Forum already got. So in this case, what kind of evidence will the Governors Forum be asking that he provide?
I'm believing that that's the same that's the same consultant who is being sued by another consultant that says, this is not your job. This is a job that I had done. And the EFCC had done an investigation and come up with the conclusion that the entire process is a fraud. It's on record.
So now the NGF is saying, look, Mr. AGF, you're wrong. We cannot afford to pay any money. And by the way, the matter is in court, so all should hold on until it's over. That's the position right now.
The position of the NGF is that this matter is in court. Let the courts conclude their work. If there is any reason to pay anybody, the NGF is very willing to pay it.
All right, we'll wait and see how all of that eventually pans out. Mr. Abdurrahman Bello Bakindo is the head media and public affairs of Nigeria Governors Forum. Thank you for your time again.
Thank you very much, Ambale.
Well, back in a moment. Stay with us. All right, welcome back, Mr. Austin Iwa, who is the former AIG of police, joins us next as we focus on the security situation in the country. Good morning, and thank you for coming on today.
Thank you for having me.
Well, this just keeps going, and I mean, yesterday the president had that meeting. He since said they will explain why they will not use force to rescue the Abuja, Kaduna abducted train victims. We've seen more persons have been released and more have been captured, those who perpetrated some attack in Norway by the army. But they keep talking about this, or recently talking about this, the need for cooperation among several agencies to ensure that they are all fighting this on the same front, on the same page, because that will instill a lot of confidence. Nigerians can volunteer information, which they're always asking for, to help a great deal. You've been involved in all of this in terms of battling this, trying to see what is going wrong, how do we solve this problem. From what you've seen, what's your analysis of how we're approaching this, given the recent narratives coming from government?
Let me start by saying that I think the president was right by saying that it will not be right to use force at this stage. I mean, given the way these people operate and the way the kidnappers are kept, I think it will lead to too much of collateral damage that will not be, Nigerians will not find comfortable to accept. If you look at the visuals we've seen from the bush, you will see that the kidnappers and the victims stay together. It is not as if they cannot be picked, but it will create so much problems and pains for Nigerians. And given the fact that we've been calling on government to upgrade its performance in this area, is going to be a problem. I think to some extent there has been some level of interagency collaboration, maybe at the level of operations itself, where strategies are executed. My problem is that there don't seem to be too much of coordination at intelligence level. You know,
Why do you say so?
Yeah, because I'm not sure we have an intelligence model in this country that that brings together the intelligence of all the models of all the organizations, all the security organizations. There are close to 11 security organizations, and almost each one of them has an intelligence department. But without a model that coordinates, that brings every one of them together, is going to be a problem, because each one of them is working in accordance with its own strategy.
But yesterday, I mean, we looked at the Terrorism Prevention Act, and it recommended that the NSA's office coordinates all of these activities, and they're supposed to have this Terrorism Coordination Center. Is that to say that that's just on paper? It's not existent?
The NSA office is just an advisor. Does it have powers to give control, command and control? Does it have command and control power over the armed forces and other security agencies? I'm not sure. I think in that regards, there needs to be a law that gives the NSA the power it requires to coordinate all the security agencies, especially the intelligence outfits, and also be able to give directive to each one of them. So it's just an advisory office. So I'm not sure that the NSA office is as effective as one expects it to do in terms of relating to these other agencies.
Speak to this impression, because many are of the impression that, of course, there's intelligence in this country, and they then assume that the agencies are working together, coordinating that intelligence to ensure that things go wrong. But are you saying that
I know that
doesn't exist?
It exists. There are meetings held, but what model is being used? What is the law backing it up? Are they institutions? You have the Joint Intelligence Board. You have the Intelligence Committee. I think they call it Intelligence Coordinating Committee or something like that. You have those two strategic committees. But are they institutions, or they are just meetings that intelligence officers from different organizations come together and sit and discuss and walk away. So these are some of the challenges. If they are institutions, we know that there will be a backroom activity, I mean, coordinating group of people, experts that are coordinating, and then apart from that, you will have an analytical section that does joint analysis, working together, planning together. Do they plan together?
When you were an AIG, this never happened?
No.
Working together, planning together with a model.
I never worked in the intelligence, and I know that we don't have an intelligence model that coordinates all that answers to all the security agencies.
So by model, what do you want to see when you talk about the model?
No,
what should it be?
By model, it means that there is a system and a structure where all security and intelligence agencies derive their powers, work towards. For example, the police has its own model, the military has its own model, and other security agencies have their own models. There is no one model. I'll give you an example. In UK, there is a national intelligence model in UK. And all security agencies follow the systems that are created by this model. But here we don't have it. And so, because of also interagency rivalry, and because there are no clearly defined roles and responsibilities, because we have overlapping responsibilities among the law enforcement and security agencies, you discover that agencies there's a tendency to hoard some information and to...
Among themselves?
Yeah. Some agencies may hoard information because they want to use the information to promote their image.
Oh dear.
So intelligence sharing, there has to be a model for intelligence sharing. Is there a model for intelligence sharing? There has to be a model for analysis, for collation, for dissemination. Do we have a coordinated system for it in this country? Maybe by the time you speak to heads of these units, because I left 4 years ago, many things may have taken place. Maybe they will tell you that now we have a model for collation, we have a model for analysis, we have a model for dissemination, and all that, and we have a model for its use. So for me, it's a big problem. So what I see is that at the operational level, there seems to be coordination, but even at that operational level, what is the command and control structure?
Wow. Well, my colleagues in Lagos, I've got questions for you. Guys?
From the question you asked about the counterterrorism center, looking at that, the website of that particular center right now, ctc.gov.ng, I'll begin there by asking you, Mr. Iwa, what you think and whether or not that's executive enough. For instance, on its landing page, it has that the Terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Act, also gives the Office of the National Security Advisor the mandates to ensure formulation and implementation of a comprehensive counterterrorism strategy and build capacity for the effective discharge of the functions of relevant security, intelligence, law enforcement, and military services. So it would seem like there is some measure of authority given by this terrorism Prevention and Prohibition Bill that's been reviewed up to date in 2022. So given this, would you still say it's because there is no law that empowers, or what could be missing?
I think what you're talking about is a strategy, not a law. There's so much that is written down in Nigerian policies that are not implemented. So much. You are talking of a NAC test. I don't even know. I'm not very sure whether currently NAC test has been used or is being used in executing the counterterrorism efforts of the armed forces and other law enforcement agencies. When I was serving, I didn't see it being executed. So if it has been reviewed, then that's a good thing. But let us practicalize it.
Well, the question there...
One thing I know...
Yeah. Go ahead, please.
No, one thing I know is that you have strategies all over. Some of these strategies, like the National Counterterrorism Strategy that was developed many years ago and it's been upgraded, was it developed through coordination by all the security agencies, or it was developed and the content dominated by one agency? That also needs to be looked into, because if it is not coordinated and developed by all the security agencies sitting together, then it's going to be a problem in terms of implementation.
Don't you see a challenge,
I know
Mr.
that
Ewa?
sometime in
my sincere apologies for butting in. But don't you see that as a challenge, where all security agencies have to sit down to have a conversation around intelligence? As you said, we have various agencies of security having their own intelligence units and all of that. But then there is a DSS, or is it SSS, whichever one one wants to look at. There is a DMI, there is an NI, and all of those agencies are there. So what would you say to those who have suggested an intelligence clearinghouse? Because it's not for the absence or dearth of intelligence, it would seem, given the example we heard about the Kuje attacks, where intelligence was secured that this was going to happen, but it would seem, as you said, no action was taken. So is it a dearth of intelligence consequently demanding a clearinghouse for intelligence, or a will to do anything protecting and preventing destruction of lives and property?
I think it's a lack of intelligence planning together, and a lack of teamwork together at that level. If you recall very well, when Nigeria celebrated its 50th anniversary, there was a bomb blast at the Eagle Square. There was intelligence that bomb blast was going to take place or may take place. But was it shared? It was hoarded by the specific intelligence agency that had that intelligence. So this is some of the things I was talking to you about, hoarding intelligence to make you look good. So, but if there's a clearinghouse, the clearinghouse should not be led by one agency. It should be be a joint clearinghouse. It should have the police, the military, the other security agencies in one place, working together, defining the intelligence, looking at analyzing the intelligence together, developing strategies together, and allocating specific responsibility to agencies that have responsibility for that area of operation. Take for example this war crisis now. It is the military that is briefing. This is a purely law enforcement responsibility. But it's the military that is briefing. And for me, I was expecting that, the operation was jointly conducted, but I was expecting that it is the Inspector General of Police that will give the briefing, because this is a police issue. This is a law enforcement, a crime problem.
Mr.
But now we find that the military itself has become a police organization, in quotes. And so they are allowed to give briefings on criminal issues.
Well, Mr. Ewa, is that suggesting in any way...
in those days...
My apologies again. Is that suggesting in any way interagency rivalry, when every agency seems to want to show that they are doing something?
It's a symptom of interagency rivalry. It's a symptom of it. Because one expects, like I know in those days when I joined the police, even where you had joint operations between the military and the police, when it came to briefing the press, the specific organization responsible for that crime will brief the press, even if it is joint. And in this case, it is a joint operation between the military, the police, and the SSS and other agencies. But this is a crime situation. The briefing should be done by assigned agency that is responsible for crime.
Mr. Iwo, I couldn't, you know, miss out the points that you made about how security agencies sometimes hoard intelligence, you know, just to use it to look good, you know, as an image promotion strategy for their own organization. Is there something, you know, in the code of conduct or at the training level of these security agencies that suggests or encourages them to hoard intelligence, which would be scandalous if there is anyway, given the cost to lives and property?
I'm not sure there's any training. We're certainly not in the police.
So if there isn't
There's no training.
Isn't it?
I think it's just a practice problem.
So isn't it reasonable at that level if intelligence is hoarded by security agencies?
I didn't get that.
I said, isn't it reasonable if intelligence is hoarded by security agencies just so that they can look good?
I don't know whether it's reasonable, but I think it's wrong. But just like I said, because you don't have a national model for intelligence gathering, for analysis, dissemination, and every agency has its own intelligence model. And so because of that, you will find these pockets of dereliction of duty.
Well, just on that same issue that you raised, one is just wondering, I mean, trying not to cause, you know, whatever disaffection, is the fact that there is that information that is also available to us, that there are intelligence agencies in all the 774 local government areas of the country. They get information. And then some of that conversation we've had with some people who are active at the local government levels say that they have security councils of sorts, where the governments of the local government, the council members, the traditional rulers, community leaders, they come together to take care of these things so it doesn't get out of hand, since, as they say, all insecurity is local. So in that regard, would you say, or agree with those who say, that we need to get that level of security checking right or back on stream, because all security is supposed to be local primarily? What's your take on that?
Yeah. I think maybe we need to understand what intelligence is all about, because we keep using this word intelligence, we got intelligence. But intelligence, what most people talk about when they are talking about intelligence is information. It's not really intelligence, because intelligence is information that is analyzed, that is gotten from various sources. When you get information from various sources, pieces of information, you put them together, you collate them, and then you analyze, and the output of that, that analysis is intelligence. But we keep using the word intelligence as if you pick it everywhere. Of course, at local level, you may have all kinds of information. How do we place value on this information that are gotten from local areas, local people that are operating in local governments and in different local communities? We need to have a system of getting that information out, of classifying those information, a system of looking at the value of that information to what we are dealing with, and a system of sending information to the relevant agency or the relevant unit that needs it for the purpose of analysis. I'm not sure that at the local level we have that structure. Even among the security agencies. Maybe SSS and maybe police, maybe, but I'm not sure we have a system of collecting information at local level, putting them together and sending them to relevant agency for the purpose of analysis.
I also couldn't miss out the point where you made earlier about the National Security Advisor being merely an advisor, but the current National Security Advisor is a retired general. And part of the Terrorism Prevention Act that my colleague Ayo quoted earlier said apart from the act empowering this office to develop a strategy for intelligence, it also mandates that office to develop capacity for agencies. Being a retired general, shouldn't this now be sort of a soft ground for an understanding to be created between his office and that of the other security agencies?
Absolutely. I don't know what is happening currently, but I think that provision in the strategy is apt and will help a lot if it is translated into practical products. For example, we need to have joint training. We need to have joint treaties, joint seminars with the relevant intelligence agencies and even operational units of all the security and military formations. We need to have that. I think the NSA is in a position to drive that process of ensuring that there is a model and that agencies are brought together to train, and that from time to time you have reviews going on of the model itself and the training itself, and there are treaties going on, not only at the senior level, but at the operational level, the rank and file level, that this training should take place. I think it will help a long way. It will help in ensuring that that rivalry is dealt with, is taken care of, the hoarding of information is taken care of, because there will be a pool where all information will be taken, will be sent to. I mean, you recall the 9/11 incident in US, and by the time they were investigating the 9/11 and the role of security agencies, they discovered that some security agents, they discovered that the intelligence was there.
But there was a gap.
But there was a gap, and that was why the Homeland Security came about. The Homeland Security Act made sure that there was intelligence coordination. You send all your intelligence into one pool, and if you need it.
So that's what you mean by that clearing.
Yes, which means there is a model. And that is what we talk when we talk about clearing house, for example.
I need to revisit this, which my colleagues read, about the role of the National Security Advisor in that Counter-Terrorism Prevention Act of 2022, which says, A, the National Security Advisor shall formulate policies for the effective implementation of concerted counter-terrorism and terrorism financing efforts. B, ensure the effective formulation and implementation of a comprehensive counter-terrorism strategy in Nigeria. C, provide support to all relevant security, intelligence, and law enforcement agencies and military services to prevent and combat acts of terrorism and terrorism financing in Nigeria. And then let me run all the way down to E, which says, subject to the approval of the president, he shall establish a national counter-terrorism center for effective coordination of relevant agencies under this act. So that suggests the president has a huge role to play here to ensure that
it's
if
a
there's
huge
a gap,
responsibility.
He has to fill it.
Yes, sure I don't know the extent to which this has been, all the responsibility there have been established and practicalized. I don't know the extent. Because these are intelligence issues. You don't get to know everything that is going on. But I think that information talks to what I'm talking about having a national intelligence model that will help in articulating all information and intelligence that you get.
Many listening to you will wonder, does that mean that in spite of all these billions of dollars, huge resources that the country channels towards security, it's just some of these little things that is thwarting the efforts of those agencies that gather things, but it's not analyzed centrally? That seems to be a missing link here.
Yes, I think so. I believe so.
But perhaps the National Assembly, this is one area that they have oversight functions. They call the service chiefs time and again. They call IGPs as well to come and brief them. So these are areas that we expect that they should ordinarily see. They've had security summit themselves, the National Assembly. So these are things that we expect that they should know that this is the missing link and this is what needs to be addressed. But speaking about those briefing, which you referenced, so if it's a joint operation and you think the IGP should have been given that briefing since it's a criminal matter, but in some cases it can be joint briefing as well, because after the military extracts what they need, the IGP can give the information and other agencies.
Absolutely.
That's what you mean by sometimes it can be that way.
Yes, absolutely.
So,
and let me just come in. You talked about the National Assembly coming in. I think what we need in this angle is the National Assembly to give us a law on national intelligence coordinating system or national intelligence model from which a strategy or a policy can be developed. I'm not sure there's any law in this country on intelligence. I'm not sure, but I think it's somewhere that the political masters can look into. And talking about the briefing, there's nothing wrong, even if the army is to lead in the briefing, but the IG is sitting there with him, the DSS director is there, and each one will talk, will say something about the issue that is being discussed. But where you have just one agency talking about joint operations, the result of joint operation without even any of the agencies, top level of the agencies represented there, I think something is not comfortable with that.
I hope at least lots of people would have gotten the point that need that you've made in terms of what we need to do to ensure that there's results to all of this. Now, intelligence, which for what you think, it might have just been information which is not analyzed. So that is an area that needs to be addressed. Well, thank you very much indeed for your time today.
Thank you for having me.
Mr. Osinewa is a former AIG of police. We will be back in a moment. Don't go away.
Thanks for staying with us. It was 2 years ago, February to be more precise, the Vice President, made a comment about the need to step up our activities in terms of security. He said this back then. There's a lot going on in terms of trying to beef up security. The security situation is one that is very challenging. Then he says, we're looking at aspects of surveillance. How we can do more aerial surveillance using drones and electronic devices to improve surveillance. And a number of people have come up with all kinds of things, including phones. I would say, you know what, in case there are some rustlers coming from wherever, there are some technology that's able to detect that. But the one we are talking about this morning is one which Dr. Olushola Ayola, a robotics engineer, has devised, and he's here to discuss with us. Thank you so much for joining us.
It's my pleasure to be here. Thank you.
First of all, is this a big deal? Some would have said, look, did we have to wait until now? This was supposed to be a no-brainer.
Yes, well, the use of drones is not a big deal globally. It's been used for photography, it's been used for surveillance, maybe for geographical surveillance and all of that.
And movies.
And movies as well, thank you. It's not a problem. Although we know that when it comes to military operations, there's a lot more to just flying above the ground. You need to have endurance, you need to be able to last longer in air and so on, go higher. To higher altitudes. But then what is peculiar in this case is the application. It's not enough to just fly a drone that can see what's going on ground. What if the terrorists are under a canopy of, forest? Or what if they are in a cave? Because that's the peculiar situation we are facing, where it's difficult to track because everybody can hide from an optical camera. So the case here is then, okay, how about we deploy something that is like a sniffing dog, a dog that can sniff out where people are hiding. And that, in that case, is the use of carbon emission tracker, because every human activity emits carbon monoxide. I'm talking about cooking, transportation, combustion of, generator and all of that.
Okay.
And that's the peculiar angle we are coming from.
But how is this, for want of a better word, peculiar? Because, I mean, in various communities, in the hinterlands, there are always pockets of communities like that where they have these carbon emission things that you talk about. I mean, so how will we know? My grandfather's farm settlement, for instance, it's very, very far from town. So, and there are pockets of communities like that all over Nigeria, farm settlements and all of that. So how will we know which is which? How do we know that this is not a farm settlement, is a group of
terrorists
to want to...
Well, when it comes to the deployment of AI, there is no single aspect of intelligence that can capture everything. We have to bring in human intelligence, geo-intelligence, signal intelligence, and all of that. Now, what this is able to do, and I'll explain very quickly here, if you have a large expanse of land, a forest, and you want to scan, you could use an optical camera. In fact, there is the thermal airborne optical sectioning imagery now that can help you, that uses heat signatures to tell you who is under a forest canopy. But before you can use that technology, you have to zero into a particular area. So the idea of knowing which particular spot within a forested area should be surveyed critically needs some level of carbon emission intelligence, where you can say, well, from this entire forest, this seems to be the spot generating the highest amount of carbon, which is human activities present there. And then you can then zero in to use other intelligence to see what kind of activity is there. Then, of course, there's the human intelligence where troops can tell you that, oh, that particular zone, we haven't been able to penetrate that place. Oh, clearly then, the people who are probably there are not friendly people. But we're not saying that with carbon emission, we already can tell that these are terrorists. But with carbon emission, you can tell that there is a human enclave or a human settlement in the midst of this thick forest. Now, who they are, what they are doing there would be left to other aspects of intelligence. So it's that collaboration that this helps to bring together.
So it's not precise. It doesn't give precision in terms of pictures.
No.
It doesn't.
No.
So even in the absence of, your carbon emission tracker, it's a no-brainer that drone technology is, a game changer in terms of, this peculiar types of investigations. So that makes me ask, I beg your pardon to draw you into the conversation about security. Should it be tenable that because we cannot use force, because the terrorists are using the victims as human shields, then we cannot use force, to go capture, to go rescue those who have been captured? Doesn't that speak to an absence of strategy?
It does, actually. The reason is this. Fine, whichever technology you deploy, there will be a loophole to it. If it's weaponry, if it's operational intelligence trying to attack, they will definitely know how else to prevent. Even we've seen in case of hostage taking, where a criminal host, keeps a lot of people in the building and says, we're going to stay here until you get out of the way, give us a van to drive away, and the security agencies have to provide those things. The next thing will be, what level of intelligence can you deploy to counter that eventually? So in this case, with humans as shield, fine, you can't attack. You can't just throw a bomb onto that kind of territory. What has to be done, therefore, is to use other technologies that can subdue everyone in the building without killing anyone, and then you can then pick out whoever it is that needs to be picked up. But then precision, again, is important, because you need to know where exactly these people are. You
talked about the need for collaborative intelligence with this carbon emission, this thing. Now, so is this carbon emission tracker you're talking about, is it a first item or a second item or a last item in the chain?
Okay, it's the first item. So here you have a drone that has a carbon emission tracker and an optical camera and a thermal camera as well. So with carbon emission tracker, you're able to survey an entire space, an entire forest area, and zoom down to one spot, a hot spot, for example, that gives the highest amount of carbon emission. And now you can deploy thermal imagery, which is the next phase, to see what kinds of activities are going on there. Do we have human beings? Are they within an open space? Are they lying in the forest? And that's where this idea of thermal, airborne, optical sectioning comes in. Then after that picturing, you now want to see exactly what kinds of activities are going on there. You can deploy normal camera visions now. Now, these are the three things that can be on one drone.
On one drone?
On one drone, yes.
What's the range of reach? How far? But I ask that because, I mean, for those who want to perpetrate evil or any dastardly act, they also have some form of intelligence in their head, so they know the sound of a drone, for instance, and all of that. So that means for this to escape them, it has to be quite far. So
yes.
How's the range?
With carbon emission, we can track it up to 3 kilometers altitude. So it's not a problem, because typically you want to fly at maybe 1 kilometer, 2 kilometers. But even up to 3 kilometers, you can still get, and there is a lot of research work already, paperworks that have been done to study the trajectory of carbon monoxide. So even at these altitudes, you can still pinpoint which part of the ground generated that particular carbon emission.
So that's it?
So that's the carbon emission tracker?
Yes.
So if you were to present this to the Ministry of Transportation, for instance, that has taken over the negotiation, it has said we haven't seen anything in that regard. We have seen a private negotiator helping to release the victims. So if you were to present this to the Ministry of Transportation, what are your assurances in terms of the deployment of this carbon emission tracker to help identify the location of these Abuja-Kaduna travelers, the remaining victims that are still with the terrorists?
Well, when it comes to things like security, a lot of considerations have to be made. In a negotiation, for example, I wouldn't expect the ministry to try to bring in an attack. For example, we can find you if you don't cooperate with us. Rather, at this point, they will have to then negotiate on the basis of a kind of win-win situation for both parties. I'm talking about the government and the terrorists in this case. But then going further, the use of this technology would provide no hiding space or no hiding spot in the forest area. So it can be something that will be deployed in areas that are still not as hostile, for example, as the Kaduna-Abuja environment. So if we can deploy this ahead of time, then criminals would know that there is no hiding place. But in the case of negotiation, that has to be dropped. Like you drop your weapons, for example, when you want to negotiate, so everybody can feel like they can win-win. So I believe that's the way to go about it.
Chamberlain?
Well, yeah, this is a very, very interesting and lovely feat, so it's good to see some good things coming out after all. But, I remember when I was in Israel, the IDF there did tell us that they were eventually able to develop this technology that, yeah, that's for you. They were able to develop this technology that they can actually see the tunnels that are being dug, drive from above the air, and listening to you, it means that there's a huge hope for us moving forward. But in terms of scaling this, are you in touch? Has anybody reached out to you, say government, state government, federal government, any agency whatsoever? Do you need support to ensure that we take this to the next level and the country benefits from what you're doing at the moment?
Yes, thank you very much, Chamberlain. Now, to get this to the next level in terms of scalability, there has to be some level of cooperation between the RAIN, that's where I belong, and the university environment, the research institutions that have the capacity to keep this ongoing. And of course, the interest of those in the military sector, the research agencies within the military. Now, that discussion is what we are waiting for. That discussion is what we are expecting to happen. But I believe, first of all, that just by mere looking at what we are proposing, brains within these agencies, brains within the university environment and the military research institutions can already start looking into this. So even if I'm not communicated with in the future, it's expected that somewhere there is some research going on to actually bring about these technologies. It's not the innovation of a drone that is new to Nigeria, nor the use of carbon monoxide, like you rightly said earlier, but then the deployment, its application. Although I must say that there are a number of AI algorithms that still need to be run after the use of these data collection systems to then infer where these people are and what kind of activities are going on there. So hopefully that discussion will come up. But right now we are still expecting that to happen.
What would you tell those listening to you now who equally want to get into this field, they're trying their hands on inventing one or two things, and they're facing a lot of frustration, so much brick wall. They just want out. In fact, they want to leave the country and go do something elsewhere or achieve their aims elsewhere. What would you tell them if they were to move forward in this country?
Thank you very much. I'll tell them, you can only excel where there are problems, because that's where you get opportunities to deploy your solutions. So if you are the best in your field, or you want to be the best in your field, you still want to have access to people that need these solutions. So you might want to travel abroad to get the knowledge, or you might want to stay in Nigeria and look for places to learn, but always look at how you can solve problems within Nigeria and bring that solution home. I would say this because I've been in the UK, I've been in the robotics environment in the UK, but I deliberately came back to Nigeria to make sure that all my solutions are tailored towards solving Nigeria's problems. But I must say that many of those that have these skills are already been taken out of the country, because AI is still very new globally, and countries want the best when it comes to that. So we have a role, government has a role to play when it comes to keeping these educated people, these skilled people within the country.
On with tertiary institutions about some of these things now in terms of our curriculum? Are we adjusting it? Do you know if any information is going through to ensure that they produce or help or contribute a great deal to moving this forward so that we can have it in different areas of the country?
What I know is going on in the tertiary institutions is the development of innovation centers, centers for excellence. We have that in Federal University of Technology, MENA, in OAU. UI also has the Fab Lab donated by the French Embassy and so on. Now, that just means that universities have come to realize that this is a fast developing field, robotics, AI, cybersecurity, and so on. So rather than add that to the curriculum, which of course is, takes a while to review, they have created centers that students can actually walk into, learn as co-curricular activities. And that's good also because there is no exam to write, after these ones. And students, well, the youths of today like things that they are not compelled to do, things they do out of their interest. So if students can take advantage of centers like this, and if more of these centers can be spread across the country, in fact, technological parks, across the country, people can actually develop more skills on their own without having to write an exam in the university for that.
Well, for now, let's come back to the field now, from school back to life. Because this is a clear and present challenge for for every government, federal or states. What would you be telling state governments, for instance, who are probably watching you right now and saying, look, is there any way they can use this, irrespective of whether or not the law, does not permit state governments to, they don't have authority to legislate on security, but is there anything state governments can do?
Yes, I think the very
How
first
can this be
thing,
useful to them?
The very first thing state governments need to do is to come together and speak to the Office of the National Security Advisor to perhaps allow the use of drones in border towns. And that's because even if you don't carry weapons, intelligence is the greatest weapon. We rely a lot now in Nigeria on human intelligence, but what can the local farmer tell you if he hasn't got the vision to see what's coming 2 kilometers away? So if local communities are allowed, for example, to fly drones, governments in the states can then train a number of people across the borders to keep monitoring the borders. That's a plan by one of the state governments anyway, but that has to be spread across. Because if everyone knows that, fine, there is no hiding across the borders of every state, then we can have more security. And governments must train those who would fly the drones, those who would use the drones, and those who would get the data and process that.
Do you have capacity to produce these equipment in high volumes? I'm suspecting that some of the things you need to get them done, should this conversation happen, and as Chamberlain asked you, the whole thing is scaled up. Is there the in-country capacity to multiply production?
Well, yes and no, but I'll say yes. Why? Because Nigeria is still a tech growing country, young tech growing country. We still have to import some things. For example, the motors that would spin the propellers. We have to import the microcontrollers, the boards, but that's not a problem, because you can easily import all of these things from any other country and without even anybody raising an eyebrow. It's when you import an actual drone that people can say, hey, what's this? What are you going to use this for? For someone that knows how to build a drone, for example, he would import a microcontroller board from one country, import the motors from another country, and you won't even know he's building a drone. And that, I believe, can be done very quickly. But the use of intelligence to design a drone is localized already. We have a number of people, even people who are out of school. I'm sure you must have heard about the young man who got taken abroad to Finland because of his capacity to build a fixed-wing drone. Yeah. So we have that in surplus. So we can do that. We have capacity to fabricate parts. I mean, there's a lot of 3D printing factories across the country today and fabrications as well. So that's possible. And the good thing about drones is that they have to be very light. So any capacity to get carbon fiber, for example, you already have a frame for a drone. And we can do that very quickly.
You know, Chamberlain asked you a very significant question about what counsel you would provide to, young Nigerians who would like to go abroad and make a life for themselves. Now, you also referred to your time in the UK before you returned to Nigeria. Now, if you had no option of, going to the UK and you had to study in Nigeria, would Nigeria have given you the platform, the educational, quality and technical know-how to empower you to build this carbon emission tracker?
Well, the simple answer is no. Honestly, I'll tell you that for sure. I mean, I graduated and I was still asking myself, what can I do now? I'm just an engineer with a first class, but I still have no practical skill. But going to the UK, I could see now that a university could actually have like a factory environment where students can actually see what they are learning in practice. So I decided that, you know what, back in Nigeria, we must have more of this. You may have noticed that software development, software engineers are very many in Nigeria because it's easy to learn on your laptop. But when it comes to hardware, people haven't got a place to go to get inspired. So that's the kind of environment we are creating in Ibadan, and that's the kind of environment that we hope more people would have access to. That is where they can get, because people come to my office, for example, to my laboratory, and they say, wow, is this possible in Nigeria? Can this be done? Are you serious? But by the time they see how basic all of these technologies we really think are so far reaching they can quickly get inspired to do more. And that's
with the knowledge, with the knowledge that you have now acquired, can you create an environment where you can build capacity, train youths to be able to build what you have built?
Yes, I have already done that 3 years ago, and that's what we are doing at the moment. But it's not big enough. It has to be spread across the country, and that's what I think we should do. But right now, for example, we have trained over 200 people. So what I can tell you now is that, and out of that 200, we have about 50 people that are experts in drones and robotics. Half of them are abroad at the moment anyway, because when you train people, they can quickly get opportunities abroad. But that's happening. We need more of this to happen in Lagos, in Abuja, in Port Harcourt, Kaduna, and co, so that we can quickly get this country to the next level.
Well, we can only wish you the best and hope that, as you have said, this will be scaled up to the benefit of Nigeria, not just for home use, but let's also have some things to export, for God's sake.
Yeah, exactly.
Dr. Olushola Ayola, robotics engineer and founder, Robotic and Artificial Intelligence Nigeria, RAIN. Thank you so much for your time and all the best.
Thank you very much for having me.
Okay, yesterday we talked around sports. Today, let's talk about football. In case you didn't know, now you do. The Nigeria Football Federation is going to have elections. When? Well, information available says September. Some are saying it's going to be postponed. Who knows? But today, let's have a conversation with Ida Peterside, as you've seen in the welcoming slide. He's a former Super Eagles goalkeeper. Thanks for joining us this morning.
It's a pleasure being here.
Well, we've only always seen you, as we say on the streets, in the abroad.
Yes, on the other side.
Well, I don't know if I think it will be remiss of me to not take your views on, general sports thing. I mean, you saw one of the sports we usually take to the Commonwealth Games, Olympics, and all of that. Football is one of our greatest, cells, so to speak. But what we had recently, the Commonwealth Games, of course, maybe football wasn't part of it, but hey, what's your take on the performance of our athletes?
Well, would you say our athletes or our girls?
What do you mean?
Thank you very much, Mr. Peterside. Thank you very much.
I'm offended.
You have to call it. You have to call it the way it is.
But guys also played.
Yeah, they participated.
Yes,
Yes,
they did.
but the girls won the
The
laurels.
girls,
Yes.
the girls carried the day.
girls.
Not only the girls won,
they
the guys
represented
also
Nigeria
won. They won
well.
bronze, one person won gold.
Yeah,
I mean, come
yeah.
on, that's
One
something.
person.
No, but it was beautiful to see. You know, there's something that sports does to this country. It just brings back hope and life. You know, with all the stories going around of insecurity and all that, and you see the girls, okay, not the girls, you see the team perform.
Please rub it in.
you see the team perform, it gives you joy, hope that there is hope for this country, that there are people that are still committed to the cause, that we can still raise our hands like we did in our time and say, one Nigeria. That's the beauty of it all. And when we look at it, no one is mentioning where the medals are, which states the medals are coming from. They say Team Nigeria, Team Nigeria. That should be the take, and that's the beauty of sports. That sports unifies everyone, brings everyone together, and we're all excited. Again, kudos to the Ministry of Sports. I think this time, I really do think that this time we should credit the minister. You know, most times when officials don't do well, we criticize them. You know, 2 years ago, I had the minister talk about adopt a player or adopt an athlete. And I think it has paid off. Different corporations have come out to adopt players and sponsored them and, you know, push them to where they got to.
Yeah. And
we're seeing the results. And I think the girls deserve, or the team deserves our praise, and the ministry.
Absolutely. But you know, they were unsung on their way to Birmingham. And right now, I mean, hard-won victory, everyone is celebrating them and the rest of them. That's a good thing, and we're happy about it. But I'm not sure we can say the same for football, which is your own constituency. And the fact that we didn't qualify for the World Cup, for instance, is still, you know, biting at some people's hearts and all of that. So, exactly what you think is the issue, and how does that reflect on the whole issue of the NFF elections and all of that for you?
Well, a whole lot of things are not right with our football. And with our football, really not right. I played the game from scratch. You know, I played without shoes until I got boots. We need to go back to foundation. The football must not be top-bottom. It must be bottom-top. And we've not done that. The whole emphasis on the Super Eagles will continue to bite us. Because if we don't produce top-bottom, the top cannot be well. And that's what we're doing. See what we're doing now. We're now relying on most foreign-based players. Nothing wrong in our time. We had foreign-based players, but we still had the players that were groomed locally. So what we're doing is that once there's an emergency, we go to the market instead of producing.
But what's wrong with it? What informed that? Because it wasn't always like that.
There's an organization that runs football in this country. They're called NFF. You must run football. It's Nigerian Football Federation. It's not Nigerian Super Eagles Federation, or it's not Nigerian Foreign Players Federation. It's Football Federation. Where does it start from? We must empower the state FAs. When I played, a young boy growing in Port Harcourt, we had these local teams that groomed us. We had youth teams that we could hone our skills. We started from there. And as we began to grow up, I played sports festival, 2 sports festivals. I won gold in 1988, playing for River State in sports festival. And it was automatic. From there, they moved me to Sharks of Port Harcourt, right? In 1992-93, I was invited to the Super Eagles. Now look at the growth. That's what we must do. We must come back to the grassroots, you know. And if we don't do that, we will keep struggling.
How will that play out in this, you know, in this election? Are you contesting?
Yes, I want to be the president of the NFF. I have to be, for changes to come.
What's going to be different?
It will be. Look at the ideas I have. You see,
before you begin to talk about the ideas, yesterday we talked about funding for sports, you know, on the program, and I recall our guest talking about, you know, the National Sports Industry Fund that is being considered, you know, but the NFF has access to some FIFA grant, but the commentary about this over the years has been the mismanagement of this fund and how, you know, the footballers do not get adequate welfare, and we see it in the pictures that come from, you know, their complaints from championships and all of that. How will this be a major factor in this election? And to ask that directly, if you became the next president, how would you address this?
We need to look at it critically. Everything is built on trust. You expect corporate bodies to come and sponsor. Now, ask this question. How long were we on television? Television is big market. How long have we been on television? Our league has not been on television for years. The question is, why? People must trust you to invest. If you give me 10 million, you need to come back and say, what did you do with the money? You don't even need to come back to say, you need to see what I've done with the money. What has been done with our television money? What has been done with the monies? I know it's enormous. I know the responsibilities are huge, trust me. You know, when I decided to contest, a whole lot of people in-house called me, say, you don't know what you're getting into. You know, there's no money here, there's no money. I said, no, the problem is that there's no money here. The problem is that there's no trust here. If there's trust, the money will come. And if the money comes, we must be accountable.
There's no money. The figure is $4.1 million in grants
from NFF,
from FIFA.
From FIFA.
And there's no money?
Now we're saying, what do we do with the, again, I say it's enormous. When we say a whole massive money is coming in, what you spend it on, it's uncountable. But the truth about it is that if your books are right, if you plan properly, then you will spend the money judiciously. That's what we're saying. There's no need for jamboree. The other day I was talking to someone and they said, you know, you have to fly all the FA members. You have to fly. I said, there's Zoom. It cuts off the expenditures of buying tickets, putting them in a hotel, and giving anyone stipends. You have to be wise on how you spend the money. I will bring changes. It will be painful, but it will come, and it will show, because you can't take a walk if people are not following you. If you can't lead if people are not following you, it means you're taking a walk. We must look back again. If we give the state FAs money, we'll tell them, don't come to Abuja, let Abuja come to you. Which means we'll give you money to run your state FAs, enough money from sponsors. Let's have a school sports. Let's have a President's Cup where you can groom these players and all the teams are able to gather from them and bring them in and raise. We will do well. I just have this thing. I know that we can get it right. We've not been in the last 8 years of this administration, football administration, we didn't go to 2 Nations Cup. You know, the last Nations Cup, we stopped at quarterfinals, and we did not go to the World Cup. Yes, we were in Russia, but Nigeria is huge. We are leaders in Africa. We must lead. We were coming in, somebody saw us at the airport and said this to us. We are ashamed of Nigeria. He said, South Africa, and I said, why? He said, you are not leading us. We want you to lead us. We'll look up to you.
Okay. Let's lead you to Abuja. Chamberlain.
You know, it was interesting when I heard you say, I don't want to be, I have to be the president of NFF. But, you know, for what we've seen in other sectors, sometimes the best people don't always get elected, they don't win elections, and, you know, people find themselves grappling with things. You've talked about some of the challenges or expectations of persons who were there, say you had to fly them in, and that's what many of them expect. But what kind of encouragement, what do you see playing out? Because many of them will want to have cronies, people who they think they can do certain things with. And so if they don't see you as such, they may not, you know, pan towards you, even if you happen to be the best candidate, as it were. So are you considering that? And so how do you plan to approach that?
I'm a stakeholder in this game. I'm a stakeholder. So if they have friends, I have friends. You know, we're in the system, just that we don't run it. I have a lot of support. People have come out to show support to me, or support for me. Massive, massive, massive. But a whole lot of times they're asking, how do we vote? Can we vote? The question is, no, you can't vote. There are delegates that will vote. And it's an opportunity for me to talk to them. You know, we hear people saying, you must come from the north. Is the time for the southeast? Is the time for the southwest? We're talking sports. We're talking football. We're talking about running the game. It's not where you come from. Where you come from, who is your crony, does not matter. We need the best hands. Look at our football. I just beg on them. Look at our football. Can't we bring changes? And it will benefit everybody. We will come back to the state FA chairman. We will give them money. Like I said, we must give them money, because if you don't give them money, how do they survive? How do they run the games in the state? So don't put somebody there that you say he's your brother, or he's from the north, he's from the east, he's from the south, and when he gets in there, we continue in the same system. It shouldn't be so. We must develop. If we're in Katsina, we must develop Katsina. We must develop football in Zaria, in Meduguri, in Makurdi. It must spread. And the only way we can spread it is not to let the people come to Abuja, is to let Abuja come to them. We'll give them money to make sure they go back to the grassroots and develop football from the grassroots. Okay, so it's an election, you know, and you expect people to, some to want you, some not to want you, but we are appealing that this is bigger than where you come from, whom you know, who supports you. It is football. Let's bring back Nigerian football to where it has to be, that the man in Kano, the man in Port Harcourt, and the man in Owerri will be happy.
All right, let me just jump in, pardon me. Now there are reports, Vanguard inclusive, reporting that the Secretary General of NFF has written to FIFA asking that the election, which was scheduled to hold next month, be moved to January. And in that report, they say that the NFF president, Amaju Pinnick, says influential people, they want him to continue as president. What do you know about that?
Well, you just asked two questions, the movement of the election and the Amaju story. The election has to hold. It is in the statutes, it has to hold. Anything outside the 21st or the 30th of September is illegality. And no, they don't have that power to take that decision. That decision must be taken by the board, okay? Or even the Congress must take that decision to decide to move it. The Congress sits on Tuesday by good authority. It sits on Tuesday in Yanagwa, and let that decision be made. And once that decision will be made, then it's collective, that is the body that runs football that took that decision, not 2 or 3 people that have taken the decision. The next one on Pinnick Amaju running. I am not Pinnick Amaju. But I want to say this authoritatively. I say it again. Authoritatively. Pinnick told me that he would not run. Twice I called him. He said, either I will not run. The second time, he says, I will not run. If he says he will not run, he has to be a man of honor and say, he's a big boy now. He's with the big boys. You know, let him be with the big boys. If Pinnick doesn't run Nigerian football will continue. You understand what I'm saying? So it's not all about Pinnick, it's about our game. But like I said, authoritatively, he said to me, he will not run. So all of it, then I know there's a vacancy. He's told the world. He says, men are putting him under pressure. That's what we read. Okay? Just tell those that are putting you under pressure that you're a man of your word, you will not run. Jonathan was put under pressure to run. Which office is bigger than the office of the president of Nigeria? He was a man of honor, and he stepped aside. Nigerian football can move on without Amaju Pinnick. And as long as Amaju Pinnick remains there, we'll all support him. If he wants to be FIFA president and he has an opportunity to be FIFA president, we will support him to be FIFA president. Because if he's up there, he benefits us.
Do you...
Yeah?
Do you think that he has a chance if he decides to be CAF president?
Why not? Why not? Everyone has a chance to dream. It's like asking me, do I have a chance to be NFF president? I do have a chance. And he's done well in CAF and in FIFA. He's well known there. Let him, we'll wish him well there. But here now, there's vacancy.
Okay.
There's
Even
space.
though some believe that he hasn't quite done well with Nigerian football now, you know, in the last 2 terms that he has served, you still think that he has a chance with CAF as CAF president?
Well, CAF is not Nigeria football. Maybe he's doing very well there. You know, it's politics they play there. All right? But here, we play football. So here, Amaju, he should look at himself and ask himself in 8 years,
Okay.
what have I done? I think he has to decide that for himself.
We're wrapping up now, but what you spoke about your place, your time at Sharks of Port Harcourt.
Yes.
And we have so many such clubs owned by states, owned by people in different states. Benway, ICC Shooting Stars, Water Corporation of Ibadan, Stationery Stores of Lagos, you name it, all over, Kwara United, you name it, all over the nation. Is there a strategy in your head or somewhere around to bring these back so that the local league can be stronger? Because without that, I don't know how the plan that you're talking about.
Maybe not the names. I know you are still.
I'm just
still connected to some of these old school names.
The same way you are connected to Sharks of Port Harcourt.
I am connected. I was so angry when it was disbanded because the other day I was talking to my child. I said I played for Sharks. The Sharks what? You know, all my efforts just gone down the drain. You know, but when we move on, if you don't bring money, you don't run the league. We have to give the clubs money. If you give the clubs money, they won't go back to government. If you give them club money to run football individually, government will just push them away gradually, because now they'll be self-sufficient to run the league. And once we do that, then we can control the league. We can bring back discipline to the league, and we can tell the referees, you have to get it right, the stadiums will be right, the playing toughs will be right, because he who pays dictates the tone. We'll give you money, and you account for this money, and you run games, your club properly.
Let's hope your vision becomes tangible. As a very quick one before we wrap up, and as a follow-up to Chamberlain's first question, the 37 FA chairmen have been included, and this was done some decades back in the elective Congress. And some have said, oh, they're the monster created by the Federal Ministry of Sports to ensure who becomes the NFF president. How would that affect significantly the participation of those who are going against the establishment in this election? And should you become president, would you be seeking an amendment to their participation in future elections?
We're trying to amend the status already. You remember the government wrote to the NFF to make some adjustment, but only the Congress can't do that. But I am so determined to bring changes. One of the first things I would do, the term of the president will be 2 terms only, so that all the stories, God told me and God told me not to run, friends told me not to run, will be over. First term, if you are re-elected, the second term, finish and clear. That's how we say it there. You understand? There will be beautiful laws that will help the game, and it can be static. We'll let the people own their games, and we'll make sure a whole lot of footballers are suffering.
You've not spoken to the 37.
No, but we're saying to them, you want me to appeal to them? Please vote.
This is your chance.
You have to vote for me if you want to get it right, and you will enjoy it. You know, everyone will benefit. We're not just coming to stifle people. You will benefit. We will give you money.
Absolutely.
I say it again, state FAs will have enough money to run football in their state.
What is cheering for me in all of this is, if these things work, we'll have less employed young people, because a sizable number of them who play football, you know, the way you played when you were younger, they'll probably get something. If we get football right in this country.
So it's big business.
Absolutely.
We will get it right.
Absolutely.
And Ayo will get his local league.
Yeah,
Yes, please.
We'll give him a card.
Yes.
At least he can get into the stadium free.
Thank you very much
Yes.
for that. Ida Peterside, former Super Eagles goalkeeper, thank you so much for your time and all the best at the NFF elections.
My pleasure. Thank you so much for having me.
Your own messages, your contribution to the program today will begin with this one by Suleiman, who says the carbon emission tracker drone is a good development that can be used to man our borders and ungoverned spaces. Deployment of technology and artificial intelligence for surveillance is the best strategy to adopt by Nigerian security agencies in crime prevention.
And Pastor Law Alpha Cross is next. He's also talking about security. He says the Nigerian security agencies, particularly the army, have recorded some lofty successes in their fight against terrorism recently. Let the trajectory continue unabated, fueled by the support from both governments and the general public. Nigeria shall be great again. Amen to that. Chamberlain?
Well, Festus Akinboye Wasa is the Governors Forum and FG must work together to protect public money. The Attorney General must not have a lenient approach that will encourage consultants to claim this huge amount of public money that can be used by states to clear salary arrears and pensions.
It's a very, very, very interesting one that you raised there, Chamberlain, especially when you look at the front page of one of the papers, as we said this morning, that 12 states are owing salaries of workers. That kind of money will do some good. Amaya Makinde, have a wonderful rest of your day and a beautiful weekend.
I am Bukola Samuel Wemimo. Thank you very much for watching and have a beautiful weekend ahead.
And I am Chamberlain Uso. Goodbye.